I feel like I just want to make this a recurring bit. I feel like I already have organically made it a reoccurring bit, but at this point, maybe it should be like an officially reoccurring bit of the whole breaking news the day or day before that we record the show. There's it's a common trope at this point. I feel like there's been at least like a dozen episodes where this has happened recently.
That's because there's always some kind of breaking news. I mean,
I guess that's true. The whole Diz Twitter sphere is just so active Monday to Friday. So this week, the news du jour, just what was this? We're recording Friday. So yesterday, on Thursday, the news was announced that this is out of left field. Wednesday night, we heard rumors that we might get an announcement about Rise of the Resistance and its opening date. And Thursday morning, those rumors came true, and Walt Disney World is getting Rise of the Resistance before Disneyland. And what?
I know everyone's really surprised about that, but I am not really. I mean, I guess maybe I thought that Disneyland would happen at the same time as WDW. But to me, Rise is opening on schedule at WDW. We were always told late fall for Galaxy's Edge opening here. Like that was the rumor for a long time. That was even what was on the Parks blog at certain points.
Yep.
Like they were always quoting late fall. And it was a really big twist when they switched it to being that it was going to open in August. And that wasn't what anybody expected. So now that Rise is opening, late fall, early winter. that's on schedule.
It's before winter solstice.
That's on schedule for when it was originally going to open. So they weren't far enough along in the process with that one. I think that the issues that came up or whatever it is that's been going on, they were able to fix that for this one and keep it on schedule because that delayed Disneyland, but it didn't delay Galaxy's Edge. So to me, it seems like they're keeping everything on track by having the teams here to do all the testing and everything that needs to happen to get it ready to open. They're doing that all on schedule, and then they have to go back and fix Disneyland, and they don't see that happening.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just the idea that it was supposed to open at a certain date, but I guess the land was just way ahead of the attraction. And, previous guest of the show, Joe from Parkscope, he's brought up before on Twitter the idea, and at this point I'm fully subscribing to all of these ideas, that, okay, so let's say you're Disneyland, and you develop this attraction, and you go, we're building it, May rolls along, and you realize, oh no, we have a problem. There's a technical issue, fire alarms are going off, we don't know why they're going off, what do we do? And then they finally find the problem. After they've delayed the attraction, they've already announced that, hey, we've got to push it back. But then they find the root cause of the issue and they go, oh man, if we had a time machine and we could go back 3 months and solve that problem 3 months ago, we wouldn't be in this scenario to begin with. Well, thankfully, since Disney World has one that is 3 months behind Disneyland, so then they just go, great, we have this knowledge now. We give the knowledge to WDW. WDW puts forth the precautions to make sure that doesn't happen. And then, as you said, now it's opening up on time, quote unquote, for Orlando, whereas Disneyland has to go back and figure out how to now retroactively fix the problems that now exist. Whereas for Orlando, those problems never will exist because they were prevented.
And I think the reason they decided to open WDW early is because once they had to make the call of we're going to, it's either delay Disneyland for we don't even know how long, or we open with only Smuggler's Run. Once they made that call there, I think the thought process was, well, why don't we do that in WDW as well? If we're willing to open the Disneyland side with just Smuggler's Run, then we could totally be on time to open the Walt Disney World side with just Smuggler's Run and open that months earlier than we had anticipated, which means getting people to book more vacations sooner, which is what they want. So I think once they realized, okay, we have to open Disneyland without it or else we're going to be not opening it anywhere close to on time, I think they thought, well, we might as well just go ahead and open Walt Disney World without it too, which is what bumped that date up to months earlier than we had originally been told it was going to be.
And you bring up the idea of like booking vacations and about how big of a deal that is. I think that there's a huge distinction between Orlando and Anaheim, because you and I have talked about this plenty of times before, that honestly, I think it's almost, I don't want to say common knowledge, but like a lot of Disney fans know this. Disneyland's tourists aren't really tourists. They are locals. A huge, like overwhelming majority of their traffic are completely locals. Whereas Orlando is obviously the inverse of that. We're locals and we go, every couple weeks, but most of who come to Orlando are tourists. So I think the part of the problem, at least in determining who gets Rise of the Resistance first, is Orlando basically goes, look, if we don't have a giant e-ticket groundbreaking attraction that we had originally promised for a certain year, by the time it's holiday season, people will cancel their trips. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. People will cancel their trips. Whereas with Disneyland, look, the people that are going to be going on January 17th, which is when theirs opens, they would have gone in December and they still will go in January. Like, it's not really going to change much for them. Whereas people that are booking, a $4,000 or $5,000 vacation, yeah, they will think twice if they're spending all that money in December and they go, well, I guess we could just wait till May, and then shift that trip, or the next year, God forbid, or Mickey forbid. That would be even worse.
Did you just equate Mickey with God?
I was playing the role of some finance manager at Disney that I'm sure potentially does view it that way. Well, enough about Star Wars. We talk about Star Wars a lot, and I'm sure eventually later down the road we're going to be talking about Star Wars a lot during this episode. So we should probably just get to the main meat of the show. Sup, nerds? Welcome to Average Disnerd. I am your host, Danny Bogue. As the name implies, I am but an average Disnerd. Thankfully, though, I am fortunate enough to have some very above-average Disnerds for friends. Now, you may have noticed you're getting this episode a little bit later than expected. Well, my apologies about that. But summer is quite a busy season for us in the theme park world. There's new rides, there's new restaurants, resorts, movies. It's a lot, and it's honestly been so busy, it's been hard to line up schedules with some of the other guests that I have planning to come on the show, because they've got vacations too. Thankfully, my girlfriend Caitlin has been on all of these escapades around Orlando with me, so she is ready to discuss them all. Welcoming back to the show, my girlfriend and theme park partner in crime, Caitlin White. Caitlin, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm excited to be here as your understudy. I feel like I'm just the the B team on the podcast. Like if somebody else can't play or whatever, I'm over here like, put me in, coach, and you're like, well, let me just try to see what else I can get lined up. I don't know. I think maybe I can get this to come through, and then finally last minute it's not going to work out, and you're just like, all right, this is it, you're in, and I'm like, yes, let's go. So I'm just over here all the time waiting for my opportunity to get to be on the show, and I'm not the whole show is that there's above average nerds. I'm not really. I'm an average Disney nerd also, so that's why I'm just the fill-in character for the show.
I will say there was a competition going on for a while between you and previous guest of the show, Corey Disbrow. He had been on the show X amount of times, and you had been on the show Y amount of times, and he was trying to see if he could beat you. And I will say, you say that you are an average Disney nerd, but both episodes that you've been on, Captain Marvel, as well as the anxiety episode, I brought you on with purpose. I can't say that about tonight's episode, but but I can say about previous episodes.
Not just to talk about corksicles and cheese plates, which are my chosen topics.
Which we can absolutely get into. I am always willing to talk about Wine Bar George at any given opportunity. I will also let you listeners at home know, you might hear the ringing of a dog collar. That is because Magic the dog is right next to both of us as we record this episode. He wants to be a part of the show, but dogs can't talk, unfortunately, so you just might hear his presence every now and then.
He can talk. He'll let us know if he has something to say.
If there is a car nearby the house, he will definitely let us know, so be prepared. Well, let's get into kind of what we've been doing over the past, month and change or so. We went to Universal Orlando kind of on a whim. So when did we go? We must have gone in the June 20th, 23rd range, like weeks and weeks after
set
Hagrid.
The scene. So I think it was a week after Hagrid opened. So the scene is we're at Universal a week after Hagrid opened.
And for those that don't know, that may not be on like the Twitter atmosphere, Hagrid's opening was, what did we see? 8-hour lines, 7-hour lines? Something in that range.
That's what it got up to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the high end of it, but it averaged out around 4 to 6 hours. Our friend Josh waited 5 and change to write it on opening day. So it was all over the place. And us two locals are sitting over here like, look, I know we've got the show and we should probably talk about this on the show at some point, but like, that's a whole lot of time to go stand in a line.
Well, we did, to our credit, though we didn't do opening day, we did try to do technical rehearsal days. Those just never actually happened. But we did go on 2 different days and stand around out in front of the entrance looking sad to see if they were ever going to let anybody in.
Stood around for an hour for nothing. We went there, stood around and left.
It was hot and that wasn't fun. And so we left. We left at the point when people started chanting at the team members because we didn't think that was acceptable at all. And that's when we decided to throw it in.
By the way, if you are a theme park guest, may I suggest, please never ever chant to cast members, team members, employees of any kind. There was some rowdy behavior that we do not endorse here at Average This Nerd.
But so then finally a week later, we had seen that the lines had been a little bit lower, more like hanging out around 2 hours, and we thought that we could handle that with some drinks and a snack or something. We'd be able to get through 2 hours. So actually the air conditioning in the house was out that day, so we realized we could stay here and sweat, or we can go stand in a 2-hour line and sweat.
If we're going to stay somewhere and sweat, I think I'd rather stay somewhere and sweat in line for a roller coaster rather than just in our own home.
Right. So we decided to go for it. And because Danny's a Harry Potter fan, but I am a really, really big Harry Potter fan. And
would you say a stan? That's what the kids say?
I think that's what the kids say, yeah, stan. But so I'm a really big Harry Potter fan. It's one of my favorite things. And I have a Universal Pass pretty much solely just to go to Wizarding World on both sides because I love to just be in it. And Hagrid is also one of my all-time favorite characters. And I think he's really beloved in the whole franchise. And it was pretty crazy they didn't have an attraction based off of him or anything yet. And so I was super excited to see this one. So it was very hard to wait for a whole week after opening. But just the way our schedules worked out, that's what happened. So we wandered over on a day that it looked like 2 hours and actually got a pretty pleasant surprise.
Yeah, it was. I remember our thresholds that we set for each other, I think we can handle 3. If it's as bad as 3, I think we could do 3. But we were hoping for 2. So we walk up, and lo and behold, it says 2 hours. And we freaked out. We're like running into the queue. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
We did first grab drinks. We're not animals.
Drunken Disney would be very proud. We did first grab a cocktail. So we grabbed a drink. We ran into the queue. And the queue, there's a large part that is all outdoors. And my understanding is that they can handle a lot of people out in that outdoor queue. So we were prepared, at least in my mind. I'm not sure about you, but like I went in going like, yeah, we're going to be outside for a little while. But we walked through the entire queue. Like we went through the whole outdoor section, which is beautiful, by the way. You can see the motorbikes flying by and stuff. So we walked through the entire queue and we get up to the castle and there must have been a dozen people ahead of us. So we waited outdoors for all of 5 minutes tops.
Yeah,
we were barely
long.
There.
It was plenty of time to sweat in the month of June, but
but it's way better than 60 minutes
right.
out in the sun. So we get into the castle, and at that point, we're in air conditioning. And the moment we walked into air conditioning, we went, "Oh yeah, we're good. We got this. We can do 2 hours in AC. Like that's fine." And turns out we waited just over an hour. The queue at that point, I guess a week or two after opening, they had really started to figure out their system. And
to be fair, this was on a weekday too, so probably a little
True.
bit slower. Or kind of late afternoon on a weekday. Danny was off that day. I wrapped up work early, and so we were able to go there, around, was it maybe 2?
Oh, I
or
think
3?
later than that. I think we went around like 4-ish or so.
3. Yeah.
Yeah, like late afternoon. So not a time that you'd expect to see a lot of people at a theme park, but man, they were firing on all cylinders. Like, I feel like when we were in the queue, there wasn't much time that we weren't moving. So props to Universal team members over there, because they were really, really efficient. So let's since we're here, let's talk about the queue. What did you think of the entire queue experience? Outdoors, indoors, pre-show, all that
Outdoors
jazz.
reminded me a lot of how it was with Dragon Challenge on the outdoor parts. I don't think they changed too much of that. It still has Hagrid's hut out there. But I did love the kineticism of the motorbike zipping by, but you're only getting glimpses of it. It's not like Dragon Challenge where you're seeing the big steel loops and everything that are happening.
Yeah.
You're getting glimpses of the motorbike going kind of in and out of the trees, and it looks like it's weaving around. And that's a really good kind of something really enticing to you, because you're like, wow, I can't even really see what all it's doing. I'm sitting here watching it, and I still don't really know what the whole attraction is going to be like. But you hear the motorbike sounds, and you hear wolves howling, and there's lots of really good atmospheric sound effects. And then inside was beautiful. Like, that's how I would describe it. So much of it was so beautiful. It starts out kind of a little eerie and a little bit reminiscent of the original Dueling Dragons attraction of when you walked in, like with the kind of script writing on the walls and the pictures of dragons. I think it maybe is meant to be an homage to...
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they repurposed a lot. Joe was telling me, because I was on the Parkscope podcast, and Joe was telling me that there are some areas that they've just flat out repurposed. Like, they took the building and just did what they could to make it feel like Hagrid's.
And a lot of what was on the walls and everything just kind of made me think like, oh yeah, like they didn't forget the roots here of Dragon Challenge or even Dueling Dragons before that. And then you really get into the castle part of it, and there's just so much to look at. At one point you're in kind of a greenhouse area with really
dragon
bright
eggs. There's dragon eggs in the greenhouse area.
Yeah, there's dragon eggs, and it's kind of some really bright natural light that's in there. And then you go into another part that has all these different kind of stacked up cages and stuff and things on the walls to tell you what kind of creature you're looking at. It was just a really, really engaging queue experience in that whole indoor part. So I never felt bored, it moves pretty steadily. Once you go, so there is a little bit of a pause and move, and that's when you're waiting to go into the pre-show. I actually like that they do the pre-show pretty early on in the queue. So it kind of sets up your expectations for what you're walking through in the queue, because it introduces Hagrid and Mr. Weasley that are kind of...
I like that you say Mr. Weasley and don't call him Arthur.
Harry always called him Mr. Weasley.
See, she is a real Harry Potter fan.
I don't know. I'm not his
You're not a
friend.
first name.
He's my friend's dad. But you're introduced to him, and you kind of see that they're working on something together. And so as you're going through the queue, you're seeing kind of the stuff that has to do with that. So I like that the pre-show happens early, because it's almost like that makes the queue then part of the full experience once you're inside. And so there's just so much to look at and so much to see, so you don't ever really feel bored. I was enjoying pretty much the whole time we were in there. And again, we got lucky and only waited an hour, so I don't know what that was like if you waited 5 and part of your queue was in the Poseidon's Fury queue, or...
Yeah. Yeah, we only waited an hour, and if you waited 5, you were in Seuss Landing. So, like... I guess that is a bit privileged. But no, I agree. The pre-show is... I love that it's early, because it gives a very good framework for you to consider the rest of the queue in. You brought up when we were there a problem. I don't know. We talked about this on Parkscope too. I don't know if this is like an operational issue, if this is a design issue, but the way that they start the show, It's like we were what? In the first 12 people that were in the queue, or I should say in the pre-show, but yet still they had started the pre-show before we walked in.
Yeah, and that's a thing Universal seems to do, because we were at Universal a couple months ago with friends that were visiting who had never been before, and we were going through the Gringotts queue, and we get to the pre-show for that, and they'd never seen it before, and we're there mostly to go to Harry Potter Land. It was for our friend's birthday, and she's a Harry Potter fan, and we get in, and there were already maybe 3 to 4, that's probably too long, but they were maybe already a full minute into the pre-show. And I remember feeling a little bit disappointed, and they were fine. They didn't know what they missed or anything, but it was a little bit, within a minute of a pre-show, you're going to miss quite a bit of the initial setup. And so I'm not sure why that happens with Universal, that they seem to start the pre-show just a little bit too soon. Because for us, we were there right away, and so we were witnessing all of it, but behind us was everybody still walking in and getting settled and kind of still talking. So we were missing a lot of it because we couldn't hear over people coming in, and that's not really to blame them, because they don't even realize when they first walk in that it's already started and they should be quiet.
Yeah, it's one thing to be in the Tower of Terror pre-show where like the lightning and thunder goes and it says, "Hey everyone, be quiet." It's one thing for that to happen and then start speaking, compared to, say, you're just walking into a room and I don't know, you're talking just as you should. Yeah, if I had to give any negative feedback about the queue, I think it would be audio, and potentially I would give that same feedback about the attraction itself. So if I had to give any feedback to the queue and the pre-show itself, and honestly, I might even say to the attraction as a whole, I would probably say audio could probably be punched up a bit. And the good thing here is that that's not that hard. Like, engineers can go in and change that. But there were times in which I thought it was hard to understand what people were saying. This is especially true in the pre-show, but like, we're standing in there, and sure, there are people talking, whatever, but the speakers themselves just made it hard to hear what Hagrid or Arthur, or, excuse me, Mr. Weasley was saying.
You don't know him well enough to call him Arthur.
Maybe I just see myself as an adult at this point in that universe. I should see myself as more of a child.
Would you call Professor McGonagall Minerva?
No, she's a queen. Why would I ever... I would never invoke her name in that way. Yeah, so audio standing aside, I think the queue was incredible. There's one room, and I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it's right before you go to the load area of the attraction where you're supposedly like under, I don't know, like basically a testing range for Hagrid or whatever. And if you look up into the ceiling, you can see Hagrid, like the shadow of Hagrid on his motorbike. And motorbikes, by the way, because the way the story goes is that Mr. Weasley has duplicated Hagrid's motorbike into a bunch of motorbikes, which makes perfect sense for a roller coaster where there's 8 motorbikes all attached to each other. But if you look up, you can see Hagrid's bike moving around, and there's a moment where like he hits the Dragonfire button, and then there's fire everywhere. You see like creatures come up across the ceiling. I'm not sure if I ever told you this, but I learned how that happens. Did I tell you that?
No.
So this is all an LED array. It's not that it's when you look up, you think they've got like an HD TV or even just like a TV up there, a bunch of TV screens.
Is there a spoiler, like a magic ruining version of a spoiler warning? Like... That's true. Man, it's so funny. I do spoilers so much about like movies, but I never think about like how stuff works at theme parks. I like that you said, I don't want to spoil too much about this room, and then you were like, but I'm going to break the entire effect for you.
I didn't get too far. You
I think
stopped
Danny
me before
forgot
I
we
got
were
too
on
far.
a podcast and was just talking to me.
You stopped me before I got too far. But, okay, so if you do not want to hear about the tech of how this room works, skip ahead about a minute.
Don't listen unless you've already been on it. If you've already been on it, then maybe it's okay. But if you haven't been on it yet, don't listen to this at all. I almost don't even want to know this, but I can tell I'm going to be subjected to it.
Skip ahead a minute, and if you don't want to hear about Hagrid's in general, use your chapter markers, jump ahead.
Can I skip ahead a minute?
No! It is basically, this is tech nerdy stuff, but it's LEDs, which are basically just 3 colors. They're big groupings of LEDs that make the illusion of those images, but they use diffusers. So like the glass is almost like frosted glass that you're looking at. So in our reality, it's a very inexpensive way of creating those images, but it also makes thematic sense because you shouldn't be seeing a crystal clear image of the underside of a bike. You're seeing kind of a shadow of it. It is the most creative and clever way in my eyes of making it cheap and easy to do for like a production side of it, but also making sense for the characters.
All right, so if you want to get back to the magic of it, if you wanted to know how it is that they duplicated the motorbike to make a whole train of motorbikes, that would be with the Gemenio charm. Gemenio charm? I think it's Gemenio charm. That's how they duplicate the motorbikes.
Let me just point out, she does not have a book in front of her. She's literally pulling that out of her head. She didn't like Google this.
I don't need to. No, wizards don't use Google, Danny.
Oh, God. All right. Well, let's get to the attraction,
they
shall
have Hermione for that.
So yeah, let's move on to the attraction itself. So we waited just over an hour. We got on the motorbike. So you took motorbike side. I took sidecar.
Obviously.
I gave you the opportunity. I was allowed to ride sidecar. But what's really cool is they designed the attraction with sidecar in mind first. So every show scene that you experience is always on the left side, which is on the sidecar side, because they were afraid that people weren't going to be able to experience it completely if they weren't sitting on the sidecar. So I can tell you, if you have yet to go on the attraction, don't be afraid about sidecar. I loved the entire experience from sidecar. And didn't you say that you also considered that like you'd want to do it again? But
oh, absolutely. I want to experience it both ways. I just was, I don't know, picky, and I wanted wanted the motorbike because you get to hold on to the handles and you get to push the button, which was really the big draw, was that you get to push the purple button.
Speaking of spoilers, we should probably just say we're going to talk not necessarily about main story points or like key surprises in this attraction, but if you've yet to be on it and you want to go completely spoiler free, maybe skip ahead to
you're
when we
gonna
talk
know
about
about the
Big Fire.
purple button the second you sit down on it.
That's
also
true.
there's a test car that you sit in and that has the purple button on it.
And if you're a fan of the series, you know what the purple button does. Like, it exists in the series. So that being said, it is one of the most incredible, unique attractions I've ever been on. I was going to say roller coaster, but I just think attraction in general, because I don't even necessarily see it as a coaster first. I see it as just a really great storytelling attraction. Like, would you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. I mean, it is definitely a roller coaster. It's a train moving along a track, and it goes fast, and it is very thrilling. There were multiple times where I screamed, and not because it goes upside down or anything like that. It's just it's fast, it's quick, and you feel yourself moving back and forth as if you were on a motorbike, and it has all of those tight turns and everything you would expect to experience on a motorbike is how it feels. So it's thrilling for sure, but it's so much more than that. You are actually looking around the whole time you're on it and experiencing different show scenes, and there's animatronics, and it's definitely so much, like, just calling it a roller coaster I don't think does it justice.
Nor do I think it sets the right expectation. Like, you look at what it replaced Dragon Challenge, which was basically just an excuse for thrills, which, don't get me wrong, I loved Adjacent Dragons, as I called it. Like, it was...
Only because he never experienced it as dueling.
It's true. I was scared. I was a scared child at that time. But as much as I love Dragon Challenge, like, the point of it was the thrill, whereas this attraction is way more about you love Harry Potter, and you love a good thrill and a good adventure, but you just love this series. And I don't know about you, but like from the moment I read the first book, I wanted to ride. Like, it's in the first chapter of the book. Sirius's motorbike is in the first chapter of Sorcerer's Stone and in the first scene of Sorcerer's Stone. So immediately I'm like, I want to fly on that thing. That seems like so much fun. So there was an emotional connection, but I think that even if you're not a Harry Potter fan, this could just be you would still get it. You would still understand what's happening to you throughout the entire thing. But as you said, there's animatronics, there's show scenes that you don't necessarily stop for. We were talking about that with Len, like previous guest of the show, Len Testa. He was asking us, like, do you stop at specific moments? You don't stop in that you come to a complete, stop sign, but you do slow down. So you're slowing down at any given moment to, like, look at a certain, let's call them creatures, a magical creature. But you're mostly, it's a weird blend of roller coaster / dark ride, you know?
It's great. I think it's one of the most innovative things to come out of either theme park, if you want to talk about the two major ones in Orlando. It's one of the most innovative things to come out of either of them in a long time. It's very, very different. It's a roller coaster. It's thrilling. It's fun, but it's not so thrilling that it's not accessible for the majority of people. I don't think it's not something that people who don't like drops or loops or anything like that wouldn't do. So it's very accessible. So it's going to appeal to the vast majority of guests, but it's so fun. You really enjoy it. And it does tell you a cohesive, coherent story from the moment you enter the queue. Until you board the ride, you're immersed in a story. And while you're on the ride, you're immersed in a story. And there's different things to look at. And you get this full experience. And so, yes, I think it's super innovative and really different. And it's also all outside. There's only a couple things that happen inside. But otherwise, it's all outside, too. So the fact that they managed to keep you immersed even though you're outside. And they planted, like, 200 live trees to create the forest, and those are only going to grow up. I'm really curious to see what it becomes as those trees grow and get taller and maybe create even more of a dark forest feeling. I also can't wait to ride it at night.
You beat me to it. That was what I was literally just about to say.
I think that'll be a whole different experience, and I'm really excited to try that out.
Well, because when you think about what the Forbidden Forest, like, at least for me, has always been like in the books and in the movies, you always picture it at night because it's forbidden. There's the scene when they have detention and they go into the Forbidden Forest and run into Voldemort and whatever. Like, a lot of it takes place at night. In Order of the Phoenix, when, they take umbrage there and whatever. Like, I want to go back. Admittedly, it's hard just because there's very long lines. So, like, finessing that the right way is going to be difficult. But, man, once these lines, like, balance out, I'm very excited to just ride that motorbike. Yeah. This time I get the motorbike.
Absolutely, because I do want to try the sidecar. There's no shame in sidecar, Danny. It's okay.
I agree. The sidecar was really great, and again, you get to see everything from that perspective. But the only other thing I wanted to say specifically about Hagrid's was I can picture if so you had referenced earlier. Younger Danny was terrified of roller coasters. I would not go on Dueling Dragons. I would not do the Hulk. I would not go on Rock and Roller Coaster. I'd never been on a roller coaster that had gone upside down. So I now look at an attraction like this, and I look at, family members or kids that might not want to be on a super thrilling attraction. This seems like a really good taster. Like a way for them to kind of dip their toes into the waters.
Yeah, I would say maybe if they've done Thunder Mountain and Slinky Dog and those, and they liked them, enjoyed them, and they're interested in a bigger thrill, but maybe not quite ready for the Hulk. Yeah. I think this would be an excellent next step attraction from, the offerings at Disney. That maybe even a little bit less intense than Rock and Roller Coaster because it doesn't go upside down.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say if you're looking for something that's maybe in between Slinky Dog, Everest, and in between Slinky Dog, Everest level, and then up to Rock and Roller Coaster level, if you're looking for something in between that, I think this would definitely be that kind of next step in coaster. Unless you have a super brave kid like I was, and I was 9 the first time I went on an upside down roller coaster. And then you can just, don't worry about that. Just go straight for the Hulk.
You'll be fine. All right, well, let's move on. We should probably talk about the rest of our day that we spent at Universal that time. So as we had referenced earlier, the AC went out, and it was in the middle of June in Orlando, which, spoiler alert, is hot. So we took a whim and went to Hagrid's. We tried to go back on the attraction because as soon as we got off, we were like, we got to do that again. Like, we couldn't stop giggling. It was so much fun. Let's go. By the time we got back to the queue, it was up to like a 3-hour wait. And
the time had jumped significantly, and then we were like, well, we already rode it this first time together. Let's go ahead and do single rider. And they actually shut down the single rider line, and they told us it was because the single rider line had gotten to be longer than the regular line.
Yeah.
So they had already shut that down too. So we just decided it wasn't meant to be for a second time that day.
So at that point, we decided, well, let's head home. It's getting, it's 6-ish. Not much more to do here. But you were actually the one that realized, hey, I'm pretty sure Big Fire Grill at City Walk just opened literally yesterday. And I went, done, let's go do that. So we actually went on the second day of opening to Big Fire Grill over at City Walk.
I think it was actually the first day.
Was it the first day?
Didn't we ask somebody and they were like, oh, today. We asked, like, how long have you been open? And they were like, a couple hours now.
Oh, my gosh. That is nuts.
Because they had done, I think, some previews first and had a media day already. But I think that was the first day of just them actually being open that anybody could walk in and grab a seat.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good way to do it on a Tuesday so that you can kind of get your feet wet before the big weekend crowds come in.
You could tell, too, because we walked in and like at least 6 people greeted us before we even got through the door. So that's always the hallmark of a new restaurant is when everybody is right there ready to say, hi, hello, how are you? Welcome. Have you been here before? Do you want a tour? Do you want to walk around? And we said that we're like, oh, we're just going to go sit at the bar. And they're like, great, we'll show you there. And like somebody actually walked us to the bar to sit down, which was super nice. I'm not complaining about that at all. It's just that's definitely something that happens in a new restaurant and not a restaurant that's been open a little bit longer. Normally you walk in and say, we're going to go sit at the bar. And they're like, okay, great. Have a good time.
And I think that's a really good opportunity to say the service there was great. We interacted with, at this point, as you just said, like no less than 6 different either bartenders or servers or
hostesses.
Like so many people. And they were all stellar. I remember on the way out, when we were walking out, I stopped. I'm like, let me get some photos and I'll put them in the show notes. But I was like taking some photos and there was this like little side room and I turned to a team member and I said, do you mind if I just go take photos? And she goes, please go take photos. And I took photos and on my way out, she goes, have you seen the upstairs? Would you like me to take you up there so that you can take photos up there too? And she wasn't being coy. Like she genuinely meant, do you want to go see what that looks like? So they were stellar. But as you said, we sat at the bar.
Yeah, so disclaimer, we didn't have a full meal there or anything, so we're not here to give you a review of all of the food. We're just kind of here to give you an idea of what it's like if you just wanted to hop in there after you've been in the parks and you're like, it's hot, I'd like some air conditioning and a good drink and maybe a snack. So, not a review of the full menu of food. Hopefully we'll do that soon because looking through the menu, it all actually looks really great.
I keep bringing up previous guests. Previous guest Corey.
This is what I was talking about. He likes anybody more than me. I'm the backup player even when I'm on the show.
I bring him up because Corey and his boyfriend Connor went to Big Fire last week, and I was talking to them about it. And they shared a steak, which they said was cooked really well, tasted great. They had wedge potatoes. Like they loved their meal.
Yeah.
Especially they said for what you pay, for what you're getting at the price that it costs.
Oh yeah, I was very impressed by prices. I thought prices were super reasonable, and for how good everything looked. So I guess we can talk about what we got. So we sat at the bar. We each ordered a drink. I'm a really big gin fan, so I got a gin cocktail called the Rosemary Salty Dog. It was delicious. It was gin and grapefruit juice and soda and a rosemary sprig, and it also was rimmed with smoked salt. So all of those flavors were really good together and really unique. It wasn't, it didn't feel like I was just drinking a standard cocktail I could get anywhere else. It was really different, and I liked the smoked salt aspect because I think that made a otherwise kind of refreshing drink fit in with a place that's supposed to be all about fire. So I really, really liked the drink that I had.
I tasted that drink, and what I said was, that tastes like summer. And I'm not a big sweet drink guy. I don't like a lot of fruit juices in my drinks, and it's pink. Like, it looks like a light pink. So when I saw it, I went, "Oh, that doesn't seem like my thing." But it was so smooth and so refreshing.
Sweet.
Yes. I didn't see what you ordered. I just saw a pink drink.
If you like gin and you've never had gin with grapefruit, you're really missing out. They go very, very well together. Just a quick gin plug here. Is this a cocktail podcast?
Average gin podcast.
Average gin nerd. That's actually me. That's my own spin-off podcast.
Yeah, that's what I'll put in the
where I talk about
episode title.
Gin drinks and cheese plates.
Look out, I'll be guesting on
That's
that soon.
That's the second time I've mentioned cheese plates, if anyone was wondering what my primary interests are.
I've been keeping tally. Well, speaking of primary interests, and we'll talk about my drink. I didn't get a cocktail because the whiskey and bourbon menu at this place is very long.
Did you say it's fire?
No, that stuff's flammable. All this, like, you don't want this stuff catching on fire. That's bad. She's giving me a very terrible.
That wasn't a
like,
good
that's
joke.
a bad joke face.
Somebody has to let Danny know when he makes bad jokes.
So there's whiskey, there's bourbon, and rye whiskey. A very, very large menu. What I ended up going with was Woodford Reserve, which I already liked to begin with. But the reason I went with it was not because I've had it before, but because they have their own blend of Woodford. So something that I love about Woodford, if you aren't a fan, it's very smooth. You think about drinking whiskey straight and you're thinking, oh wow, the burn. Woodford goes down like candy. It is very, very smooth, and this is no different. It's still very smooth, but what I really liked about it was that it had its own flavor. Like, it tasted just different enough from normal Woodford where I went, yeah, I can get this nowhere else. Like, I was happy that I got Big Fire Universal Orlando's special blend of it. And that was absolutely fantastic. But we also got food, and we didn't get a whole meal, but
we had two snacks.
Snacks.
Yeah. So, first of all, they have, I will register a slight complaint. I'm a little annoyed that restaurants have figured out they can charge us for bread service now. I think this is becoming a trend. You know, we're really big promoters of the Ale and Compass bread service. If you've ever been to the Ale and Compass restaurant at a yacht club, their Parker House rolls with the spreads, we're really big fans of that. But those cost $12, which is crazy for bread service that most restaurants will give you for free. But Big Fire is no different. They do charge you for their bread service. But we couldn't resist it because it's a loaf of bread that's cooked in their fire oven. Hearth oven. Yeah, it's your hearth oven bread. And so it's really crispy on the outside, has a little bit of a blackness to it because it's kind of charred or smoky, I guess. And it comes with 3 different spreads, right? It was a salted butter, an apricot jam.
Apricot jam,
yeah. Apricot jam, and
whipped butter.
Oh,
here it is. It's herb butter, whipped butter,
we go.
and peach preserves.
There we
That's
go.
what
So
it was.
2 different
Peach
kinds of butter and preserves, and so you get this loaf of bread. It's a really good sized portion. It's great, and you get a ton of each of the spreads, more than you need, which unless you really want to pile it on there, which I do recommend because they were all delicious. Even just the regular whipped butter was delicious. And so you get all of that. And again, like I said, it's a little annoying they charge you for it, but this was only, what, $3?
It was $4.
$4.
Like, if you were looking
find
for
a snack for $4 that is actually this tasty. I'm sure you can get, like, pretzel or popcorn for less than $4, but I promise it does not taste this good.
Super Weenie Hut, if you're listening, Value Life, the true Value Life. You go grab a beer at this place with a $4 baked bread. That is living the value life for sure.
And then our other snack was some fire roasted Brussels sprouts.
Yes.
They were really good. Our only complaint was they were a little cold by the time they got to us, so I'd like to have them again hot because the flavor was really good. It was Brussels sprouts and shishito peppers.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of shishito peppers, and they were kind of char grilled really well, nice blackened crispiness to all of that. But again,
they came in like a cast iron, like a baby cast iron skillet.
Yeah, but
and
again,
like
a little cold, so that was kind of disappointing. But
Yeah, and you're right. We both said it as soon as we had them. Like, they're a little cold. But as you said earlier, this was also their first day.
True.
So we should definitely go back and try it again because I would love to have them like fresh charred right out of the oven. The flavor alone with that, like, charredness.
So those were the only 2 snacks we had, but both of those things were really good. And so, again, since we haven't tried it, I'm not going to recommend it for dinner, but I will recommend it for if you just want to hang out and grab a drink and a snack. It was definitely a great place for that. I'm still a little sad about the loss of Emerald simply because they had a great happy hour. And I love a good deal, especially at a theme park.
Value life.
So I'm going to hope that maybe Big Fire will introduce a happy hour eventually. And maybe we'll see a discount on some of those other appetizers. But for now, it still offers a good value, I think, because the drinks weren't crazy expensive. And obviously the bread, it wasn't too expensive either. So definitely still a good deal. I just miss a little bit the Emerald's happy hour because it had some really good items on it for a good price.
I was very satisfied, and I would like to go back for dinner. Like, it looks like a nice casual spot. Like, maybe that's our pre-Horror Nights gig one time. Like,
that's a fancy Horror Nights night. That's a little less messy than we normally are.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe for, like, a fancy Horror Nights night.
Maybe we'll have a classy Horror Nights night.
We go in a suit and a dress.
I do think it's funny, and this will be nicer 6 months from now, maybe. It's funny right now, though, that they have always a fire outside with some Adirondack chairs surrounding it. So they kind of have this sort of bonfire atmosphere going on outside that just doesn't look appealing when it's 98 degrees outside.
It'll be great in January. January sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I think that'll be really cool. But for right now, it's a bit strange.
So yeah, that was our whole big day at Universal. Like, we spent 4 hours there tops, like, between all of it, and that was a solid day. We got to experience Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure. It's a mouthful every time. But then also Big Fire. So that was great, and I'm very happy to see between those two things as well as Endless Summer, Universal is firing on all cylinders, man. They are, like, this is not going to be a Horror Nights episode. We won't talk about what's going to be happening this fall. But, man, everything that they keep coming out with recently has been really top-notch. So I'm really excited to see what they have in store for us next. Yeah. All right, well, now that we have talked about Universal in Orlando, let's move 5-10 miles down the road, down I-4. Let's start talking about Walt Disney World. So we've been doing a handful of things around Disney this summer. First, I think it's fun to talk about 4th of July because we're still in July, and you see, me and, like, our friends, Andrew, as you have heard on the show before.
Friend of the show, Andrew
friend of the
Stein.
show. See, this is just going to be the ongoing thing for this episode. Friend and previous guest of the show, Andrew Stein. Our group of friends for the past, at this point, 4 years have always done 4th of July at Epcot. And you might be thinking to yourself, that sounds terrible. Like, that sounds miserable and hot and just too many people. But you know what? I've come to now look forward to it every single year. It is now, I mean, not just because I'm going with friends that I love, but guys, Epcot in the middle of the day on 4th of July is a ghost town.
Dead.
Absolutely dead. So we got there at 5-ish? We had to get there a little late this year.
Yeah.
But it was yet again another blast. It was a lot busier this year, though.
I only think that's because we got there later, because it does always pick up later in the day. So if you are going to do it, which we do highly recommend, it's I think it's really the best way if you want to have a salute to all nations, but mostly America, is to spend it at Epcot, the World Showcase, so you can enjoy all countries with a little bit of a highlight on America, which I think is the proper balance for things. But we normally get there earlier in the day, spend most of the day there and into fireworks. And usually the closer it gets to fireworks time is when Epcot starts to get busy. I think it's when people realize they're not going to get into Magic Kingdom. Or it's just they've decided that's just too much and they don't want to do it. And
spoiler alert, I would argue... spoiler alert, I would argue that it is better to do Epcot for 4th than it is Magic Kingdom.
Oh, I agree.
I think the fireworks finale at both parks are phenomenal. Like, Magic Kingdom does do a really, really good finale for 4th of July. But, man, Epcot is just... It is on another planet.
But we have a great time with it, but it's funny because so Danny's been doing this for 4 years. I started joining in. I guess the first time I came, I actually met up after they'd already left Epcot. That was 3 4th of Julys ago. Met up and went to Jelly Rolls, and then last year it rained, which kept delaying the fireworks, and Danny had to work the next day, so we decided to go ahead and call it before the fireworks happened. So this year, my 3rd year of participating in this event, was the first time I've ever actually seen Illuminations with the 4th of July tag, and funny enough, it will be the last time I ever see it.
The one and only.
Or everyone else will. So it's the only time I've ever seen it, and it was great. I loved it. I thought it was every amount of firework I've ever wanted for the 4th of July. They really go for it, and I think it's I'm not really the biggest fan of Illuminations, so I will go ahead and put that out there and admit
Guys,
that.
I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know before I invited her on the show. Like, I swear.
I think it's a pretty boring show. Don't kill me, but
You only have 2 more months to deal with it. You'll be fine.
I will say, I do love the finale of Illuminations. I like the part where all of the countries light up, and and I like the final fireworks and the song at the end and everything. I just think that the whole globe part where you can't even see what's happening on the globe is a bit of a snooze. Sorry, Epcot fans everywhere. I don't mean to offend you.
A little she does.
But
no, I agree.
About my Figment feelings.
Oh, we do not have enough time in this episode to talk about your Figment feelings. But no, I agree. The finale. I don't agree about Illuminations. I agree about the finale of 4th of July at Epcot is absolutely stellar. I was going to say not to spoil, but you'll never see it. They're never going to do it this way again.
Right. At this point, you probably want the spoiler.
They do this thing where they do the full illuminations, and then afterward they do, I guess, like a 5-minute tag on the end of it, where they do fireworks specifically from behind the American Pavilion and play traditional American anthems that you might have heard in like high school band and whatever. To me, it's always felt like they just take whatever budget they've had leading up to it, and they break that piggy bank open, and they just go, buy every mortar. Every single shell of firework that you can buy, I don't care. Just throw it in there. What do we got? Go into the warehouse. Throw them all in there. Yeah, let's explode every single thing that we've got. It's almost like deafening by the end of it.
It's enough to wake up George Washington.
Agreed. But it was fun. 4th of July was a blast. But that's not all we've done over the past couple of weeks. Just this past week, we got to finally check out Gran Destino Tower over at the Coronado Resort. And you've never really been to Coronado all that much up until we only started going over the past few months, right?
Yeah, so I'd never been to Coronado until we decided to head over to check out the Three Bridges restaurant when it opened, which we can include in this conversation also, because that's another recent summer thing that we did. And that was the first time I'd ever really spent any time at Coronado, and I was really impressed. I actually think it's really nice. I think their main lobby area, quick service restaurant, all of that stuff is really well themed. We took kind of a walk around all the way to the pool and saw all of that. I think the pool looks really cool, and I was impressed. I liked it a lot. And Three Bridges, I think, is a great addition. We've been there a couple times. We've enjoyed the snacks that we've eaten there, the drinks we've had. We love the scenery. Danny and I are big fans of an outdoor waterfront spot to hang out. We like a good sunset. We like a good sunset and a waterfront, so it's definitely a good place for us. It actually reminds me a lot of one of my favorite places on property, which is Geyser Point. Again, a good sunset waterfront spot.
Yep.
I think it's a very similar concept. I think they're trying to get you to it has more of a lounge feel, more lounge style seating, kind kind of a place that's more meant to be relaxed. But they do have food, plenty of food that you'd be able to make a full meal out of it if that's what you're looking for. They've got, burgers and entrees and that type of thing. But they also just have snacks and shareables, which is great too. So I think they did a really great job with that addition. And that was really my first time being there, was to check that out. So I'm, of course, very impressed. And I was excited after seeing that. I was really excited to see what they were doing with Gran Destino, because from viewing Gran Destino from the lakeside point of view, I thought it looked really, really nice and fancy from the outside. And I love a good fancy resort. And so I was excited to check it out. So as soon as it opened this week, we decided to take a little trip over on, what was that, Wednesday?
Yeah. And it was somewhat spur of the moment. We just realized it was opened, and we went, well, we've got the night free. Like, let's go swing by. And it's so funny because when we first got up to the gate, we were a little concerned. We're like, oh, are they going to let us park here? This is a brand new resort. Like, is there going to be a problem? As soon as we said we just want to check out the lounge, the cast members were so nice. They were just like, oh, you're here to check out the lounge. Absolutely. Enjoy yourselves. The parking's right over here to your left. Like, we hope you guys have a great time. I'm like, wow. Really rolling out the red carpet for us. That's excellent.
And the best news about the Gran Destino Tower is it has 2 bars.
Yep. Sure
and
does.
If you're somebody like us and you enjoy a nice bar experience, they've got 2 of them, which was great.
And we went to both.
Yep.
So
we did a little bit of a bar crawl just within the Gran Destino Tower. So we started out at their lobby level bar, which is the Barcelona Lounge, which is beautiful.
Absolutely
what I have
beautiful.
to say about this resort is it's beautiful inside. I actually learned a lot recently, and I hadn't heard on any of this up until this week, that the concept of Gran Destino is based on a collaboration short film that happened between Walt Disney and Salvador Dali. And so they took inspiration from that short film and from Dali's work as to how they were going to design the interior of the resort. And it shows for sure. Everything definitely looked very Dali. It looks very Spanish. It's very beautiful and very artistic looking inside. So I thought that was a really cool backstory that I hadn't heard before. So I was really excited to kind of be introduced to that. I didn't even know that Walt Disney ever collaborated with Salvador Dali. Which is really, really interesting. And there's the short film is out there, and there's a book about it that we saw on a table in a kind of conference area that we wandered into.
We're wanderers. We decided let's go explore the lobby area, and it is very interesting. Like, back on the opposite side of where you check in, there is just a conference style table, as though you're gonna have like a video call with a boardroom full of people. But yeah, they've got these art books, and one of the books is just about Walt and Salvador Dali, and that it's almost funny to me because you and I didn't know this until people that worked at the resort started telling us, and it's kind of crazy because
we're really big nerds, and normally
you would think we would know.
Stuff.
You would think we would know. And that's just funny because I wish Disney would start telling people more about that, because it is a very fun reason as to why they're theming it the way they are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the Barcelona Lounge is the bottom.
Yeah.
The one on the first floor.
Yeah,
and
it's the lobby level lounge. And when you first walk in, you're kind of on the second story. That's where the check-in is and everything. And then you can walk up and look down into the Barcelona Lounge, which I recommend you do because some of the seating in the center of it makes a shape, kind of has an artistic design to it. So I definitely recommend walking up and looking down into it because it's a very beautiful view down there. And then it's these really 3 stories tall windows that are on the back, so you can see straight out to the lake, and it's a really beautiful view from there. So we went down and we had a seat at the bar. We actually ran into, again, another friend of the show, Len Testa.
This show has too many friends.
Danny has too many friends. So we took a seat at the bar and grabbed some drinks, and it was just really nice to just sit there and kind of, that was the moment to take in the actual lobby. And I can't get over how pretty this resort is. I was skeptical. I thought the outside of the building looked a little bland, and just building a tower at the resort was different and not something Disney normally does. They usually build kind of the lower style of buildings for their resorts, and which gives most of them a little bit more of a warmer, homier feel.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely a more modern feel, and it feels like a bigger, nicer, grander resort that you would go to, I think, with the design of it. But I think they did it extremely well. It's very beautiful. It's very well designed. You can tell it's meant for a business class with conventions and things like that. It's a lot of the lobby design includes many, many outlets for you to charge your devices, which tells me it's definitely meant for people there on conventions. But it was we really enjoyed the Barcelona Lounge. We didn't try any of the food there, but they do have some charcuterie boards and hummus and different types of bar snacks that you can grab there. They're also open for breakfast, and that was more, I just discovered that from talking to the bartenders and looking at the menus. They're open at breakfast hours with just sort of some really, really delicious sounding coffee options and some pastries, Spanish-inspired pastries and things like that. So they do have a little bit of a breakfast option at Barcelona, so they're open all day. But I looked at the menu, some bar snacks, but all we had there was a couple drinks, and both of us really enjoyed our drinks.
And something worth noting, we keep talking about bars here. They have...
That's because I'm here, and that's...
This is true. Very true.
One of my favorite topics.
And another one of your favorite topics, like you said earlier, is gin. And they have various different types, like a build your own.
So much gin. Again, if you are a gin fan and you want to tune into my Average Gin Nerd podcast.
AGN.
If you want to tune into that, I'm going to do it right now. They have more options of gin than anywhere I have ever seen in the United States. I haven't seen this many options of gin since I went to London. And they have so many. And so I got their signature cocktail, which is the signature cocktail of the resort because they have it there. They actually have it at Barcelona Lounge. They have it at the upstairs
Dahlia
Lounge, and actually out at the Three Bridges Lounge as well. It is a gin and tonic with a house-made tonic that they infuse with saffron. It's really different. Even if you think you don't like gin and tonic, I definitely still recommend you try it because it tastes very different from your typical tonic water. It's really, really good. I was very impressed, and it has this big sprig of rosemary in it. It comes in a beautifully shaped glass, and I loved that drink. But the next thing I want to try when we go again is they have a menu of create your own gin and tonic. And basically they have 4 or 5, I can't quite picture the menu, but they have 4 or 5 different tonics listed, and you get to choose which tonic you want, and then underneath that tonic it lists 4 different types of gin that would pair well with that tonic. So you pick your tonic, and then you get to pick your gin to go with it, and then they make you a cocktail. And you don't have to choose one of the gins that's underneath the tonic if you want to change it up with something else, but those are the ones that are recommended that would pair really well with that tonic. And they describe them. Some of them are more dry, some of them are more floral, maybe some are more fruity. There's one that's a strawberry-infused gin that goes into a more berry-flavored tonic if you're looking for something a little sweeter. I was fascinated by that. I had to try the signature drink, but next time I go, I definitely want to do the Create Your Own Gin and Tonic because that's a really, really cool concept.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen... I've never seen a Build-A-Bear for a cocktail. And that's
it's funny because I actually experienced something like that. Like I mentioned for a moment that I haven't seen that many types of gin since I went to London. When I was in London, you order, and this happens at multiple bars in London, is if you order a gin and tonic, they ask which gin you want, and they have a million options, and you kind of describe what type you like, and they help you find one depending on which, because gin can be so different because it's all about which botanicals are infused into it. So you kind of describe the different types of botanicals you like. They help you pick one, and then this is something that actually happens a lot there, is they say, okay, we have multiple flavors or types of tonic, which one would you like? And I had never experienced that in the U.S. before, of different options of tonic and that many different options of gin. And what they've really done in Barcelona Lounge is recreate that experience of just having all of those different options. And they've given you kind of a roadmap to do it, of pairing the right gins with the right types of tonic.
I'm not much of a G&T fan, but reading the menu simply made me go, yeah, we should come back. I should do it again.
For sure.
So let's finally talk about the other lounge. We've talked about Three Bridges, Barcelona. We also got a chance to check out the Dahlia Lounge, which this has a very unique spin in that, well, previously, up until this point, Disney World had one rooftop bar, and it was California Grill. And that was it. And if you wanted to place...
Well, and the Top of the World Lounge that you can only go to if you're DVC. But...
Top of the World over or Bay Lake Tower. But those were the only two, and you could basically see Magic Kingdom or off in the distance Epcot. Whereas now, much more central on property in my eyes, is the Dahlia Lounge, which is at the top of Gran Destino Tower. So there is an indoor section, but there is also an outdoor section with couches, like little couches that are set up with, I feel like they're modern couches because they've got, basically throw pillows on them, and
it's your typical patio furniture.
Yeah.
Metal frames with cushions on it, which you would have in your typical patio furniture.
But you get great views of Disney's Hollywood Studios. You can see off on the left-hand side to Epcot. On the right-hand side, you can see off to Animal Kingdom. I will say...
Blizzard Beach.
You can see Blizzard Beach right there. The main attraction, in my book, from the view here is definitely Studios. You can see Epcot, but there's only like a very small viewing angle of it.
You're mostly looking at Swan and Dolphin. That's what you can really see from there of the Epcot resort area.
Which does mean that you can see fireworks. A little interesting tidbit when we were there, we were sitting down on a couch outside, and we were thinking to ourselves, oh, we're here an hour before fireworks. Like, we get to sit on this
premium seating and viewing space.
Yeah, this is it. We get to sit down on these couches. There will just be fireworks right there. It'll be great. But then we remembered, oh, there are people inside that are going to want to come outside to come see the fireworks.
They kind of fill in all the standing room that's between where your couches are and where the actual glass wall is of the viewing area. So we just wanted to, we made a note. We're like, let's highlight that when we tell people about this, that I wouldn't necessarily make a point of getting there super early to secure your outdoor seating space for if you're mostly looking for a fireworks viewing experience, because likely if you're sitting down, people are going to stand in front of you, and you'll end up doing what Danny and I did, which was standing up from our seats and going over to the glass wall to view the fireworks from there. So it's really, really great fireworks viewing, but don't worry too much about trying to secure your seating area if that's mostly what you're going up there for.
It's almost surprising to me how small the outdoor area is. When you have a tower this big, I was anticipating that they would build something that, I don't know, that is huge, that has a huge area for you to, like a group of people to stand around and see the fireworks from. But it's relatively small. I remember walking outside and going, this is very, very nice. Like, I love what we're seeing. But I don't know. I can picture what it's going to be like over a busy season, like Thanksgiving or Christmas or actual 4th of July weekend or something like that,
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I was definitely expecting it to be bigger, but...
What is there is very, very nice.
On the inside of it, again, I can't emphasize enough how beautiful everything is there. The inside of it, the architecture is really gorgeous. And then we also kind of took a glimpse into the Toledo restaurant.
Yes.
I keep mixing this up because the Riviera Tower is going to have Topolino. And
Toledo and Topolino.
Yes, and I keep mixing those up. This one has the Toledo restaurant, which is a tapas steak and seafood restaurant, yes. I think is what it says. So we didn't eat there, but we did kind of take a peek in. Beautiful in there. There's trees inside, and it just has a really cool looking atmosphere inside. And then adjacent to that, kind of across the elevator bay on the other side, is where the Dahlia Lounge is. And super, we would have been perfectly happy sitting inside. We chose outside just because we were at sunset time and soon to be fireworks time, so we thought we'd take outside seating. But inside would have been really nice to sit there too. And we grabbed some drinks. I think we both liked our drinks. They were good. I don't know that I was super blown away by either of them, but they were solid drinks. We also grabbed some food, so they have some small plates there. Not a ton of food options. It's not like the whole menu of Toledo is available in the lounge. It's just some of the small plates and things like that. So
it's on one sheet. Is it
Yeah.
like a good way to put it is that
So we
they
grabbed
can
a couple
fit it
small
on one
plates.
sheet?
I think the highlight for us was their savory churros, which was definitely not something
Oh
I'd
my
ever
gosh.
had
Yes.
before. I'm
Yes,
used
yes,
to, as most everyone is, a cinnamon sugar churro. But instead, this was a fried dough that was covered in a chili powder.
Chorizo seasoning is what he said.
Chorizo seasoning, so kind of a spicy chili powder, and it came with a spicy aioli, like a chili aioli to dip them in, and it was very, very good. Very unique because it's kind of a donut texture, but with a savory, spicy flavoring to it. And it was
And not only that, but the if you think of a churro, you think of a very unique shape. It's like a long rod that has like very steep
they were
ridges.
kind of curly.
Yeah, they looked. The presentation was insane because first off, the churros were, as you said, curly. They were poofy in one end and then thin on one side. Like they were kind of just all over the place, which was fun and unique, and they were still delicious. But then they were served in a paper cone, and said paper cone was being held, and I'm using the term held specifically because they were being held by a metal hand.
A golden hand.
Golden hand. I'm not sure if there's like a story reason behind this, but I'll put it in the show notes. We could not get over.
It looked very Dolly to me.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
It was just a very artistic thing to do. I thought it was really cool.
I loved it. It was very unique. It was just not what I expected.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, our server even warned us. He goes, okay, so you're ordering the churros. Just be aware they're very different. And our response was, we love different. Let's do it. But I will tell you that if you are much more of a reserved, if your palate's a little more conservative, this might not be the place for you because to us, it was about like trying these different weird
offshoot flavors.
offshoot
Yeah, the food is definitely
flavors.
very different. It's much more about trying new things. It's not nothing on the menu is going to be something you're really familiar with. So I would definitely say go into that with an open mind or just with an intention to get drinks because it is very different. It's not things you typically find on a lounge fare menu. There's no chicken wings. There's not
Which was very disappointing.
There's not any burgers or fries or anything like that. It's definitely very different and a lot of different options. And some of it's really worth trying. So if you're into trying new food and having some little bit of a different experience, then I would say go for it. If you want something a little more safe, then I would say maybe Barcelona Lounge for their charcuterie boards.
Or Three Bridges at
charcuterie
that
boards
point.
and cheese plates. Yeah, or out to Three Bridges where they do have some burgers and chicken sandwiches and stuff like that.
So the menu is divided into two, and the bottom portion is more like traditional sizes of plates, so that it could be shared by one or two or three people maybe. But the top half are more small bites. And when I say small bites, the server had told us 2 bites each. I think we got 3 or 4 out of each because we were trying to like savor them, I guess. They were sizable, but they're $3 each. So we each got 2 of them, which if you think about it, that's $12 for 2 people to get 2 bites.
Which is the cost of a typical appetizer.
Yeah, I think that was a fair price for what we got. We got a potato tortilla wrap. Would you call it a wrap? It was wrapped in prosciutto, so I don't know like.
It's a Spanish potato omelet, is what it technically is.
Oh,
which is
yes.
it's a really traditional dish in, like, if you go to Spanish tapas restaurants, is something like that. They served it in a little bit of a different shape. Usually it's more of a flatter shape. But this was in bite-sized pieces wrapped in prosciutto, I think is what it was. But yeah, so it was it's a Spanish potato omelet.
Which was delicious. Like I really enjoyed that. But the star of the show for us was so simple. It's so funny because we like thought about like trying to recreate it. It was just a crostini?
Yeah, it was a bread crostini with some fig jam and a little bit of blue cheese on top of it, and it was delicious. If you like blue cheese.
Yeah, if blue cheese is your thing, which it is now recently my thing.
It should be.
Do it. It's fantastic. So
cheese.
we're now at 4 cheese references from Caitlin for the evening.
And
So if you are visiting Disney and will be on property and want to try to maybe check something out that is both new but also a little off the beaten trail, at least as far as the menu is concerned, head over to Dahlia Lounge, Barcelona Lounge, or Three Bridges Bar and Grill.
Yeah, Coronado has really become a very enjoyable spot. There's now 3 brand new bars and lounges to visit, which can make for a fun evening if you're looking for kind of a progressive dinner of snacks and appetizers and different things to try. I think it's a great spot to go and do that if you just want to try some different food and some different spots around. Like I think Coronado has really become a great destination now with the addition of all of this.
Which is very exciting, like if you consider the fact that Caribbean Beach is also going to be getting a similar tower. So that makes me very excited for December.
And they already have Banana Cabana, which is great, and another waterside spot that we like. So them getting the Riviera Tower, hopefully they'll have a few lounges in there as well. So really adding a lot of they're really doing a lot to add some quality to the moderate resorts, some kind of higher end options at the moderate resorts.
The upgrades are very welcome. All right, well, we shouldn't do this all night, so we should probably start to wrap it up. But I do want to talk about one more thing with you because we've been talking about it a lot over the past week. We are very much so fans of this movie.
Spider-Man.
Absolutely. So for those of you at home, it's July 12th right now. The movie's been out for 10 days. I would assume that most big Marvel fans have seen this movie. So if you're listening to this and have yet to see Spider-Man, stop. First off, stop, do yourself a favor and go to the movies and go see this movie. Unlike some of my previous reviews, we're not really going to do the whole non-spoiler spoiler thing. We're just going to jump into it. So I'm going to keep talking like this for a couple of seconds longer so that you have the opportunity to get to your phone and hit pause before we start talking about spoilers, because I don't want to ruin any of the twists in this movie because they are fantastic, even as a comic book fan.
It's very twisty.
It's very twisty, as Detective Pikachu has said. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go see it right now. That being said, we're about to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming. You and I saw... Oh, I just said Homecoming. Far From Home. You and I, years ago, saw Spider-Man Homecoming. Just for the listeners, where did you fall with Homecoming?
Fun fact, that was one of our first dates.
This is true.
And I loved Homecoming. I thought it was such a charming movie. It was so funny. It was definitely different from your typical Marvel movie because it was more high schooler focused. I think it was a much younger movie than anything had been so far in the Marvel universe. And I thought that they just really nailed Peter Parker / Spider-Man. He did both so well. So I loved Homecoming. It's definitely one of my favorite MCU movies. My only complaint was I thought that the female characters of the movie weren't given enough to do. They were kind of just there for Peter Parker. They were part of his plot as opposed to having anything of their own. So, doesn't pass the Bechdel test. If you've heard my Captain Marvel episode, you won't be surprised at this commentary. If you are surprised, maybe go listen to my Captain Marvel episode. But anyways, I loved the movie. I truly did. I adored it. But I really liked the female characters, and I wanted more from them and more from them to do. And I guess to jump into a little bit, we'll go back to Danny's takes on things, but I definitely got that this time out of Far From Home. I think any issue I had about the treatment of female characters in Homecoming, which not that I think it was bad, I just think it was lacking. It was not in Far From Home. They nailed it this time.
It's funny you say like treatment of female characters. One thing that irked me about Homecoming was Aunt May. because in Homecoming,
She's so hot.
oh my gosh, she's so hot, and like we get it. Marissa Tomei looks great, like she does, but they just kept making the joke over and over and over again to the point where it was funny maybe once, and then it just became a bit that wasn't funny anymore. It came off almost as what is it, leering?
Yeah.
Like it just came off as like, hey, let's all look at Marissa Tomei, and it just I wasn't a fan of it. Whereas in Far From Home, she is her own character. She's as far as she's concerned, she's not even in a committed relationship. she's just having a summer fling with Happy. So I think who knows? That's just what she's telling herself right now. That could change. But yeah, like you say that it improved for that aspect of female characters. I think that it improved on any small bit problem that I had with Homecoming. Far From Home did it better. I said back when we saw Homecoming, one of my few small quirks was that at the end, well, first off, the action wasn't what you would expect out of a summer blockbuster. It was a little hard to discern what was happening. It was all very small scale, which was refreshing, I guess, for Marvel at that time because it was all like world stakes. So it was kind of interesting to see Peter only trying to save 6 kids was different. But for me, I still wanted that blockbuster. Even if just only for the finale, I wanted to see this big bombastic thing, but it all took place at night. So it's kind of hard to see, especially if you're rewatching it right now on your iPad on a plane. Like, you're not going to see much of all of that. Whereas the action in this movie, stellar. And I remember when we walked out of Homecoming, as a Spider-Man fan from, 8 years old when I was a New Yorker. I grew up in New York. I loved seeing the scenes when Spider-Man was swinging around Manhattan. And that's all I wanted. I just, like, in Homecoming, I'm like, just give me that. Just give me that big final scene where he's just like, yeah, I'm going to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And maybe he just swings around Queens. And that's fun, too. But we didn't get that. And I get why they didn't do it. They wanted to play off the joke and whatever. And fine. Thematically, I thought that made sense. But in the end of this movie, like, I grabbed your arm and I was just like, they're doing it. Because we got to have this final heroic moment of him swinging around New York with MJ. And also, MJ hated it.
Yeah.
The whole trope is that, oh, how romantic. He's taking MJ in his arms and just swinging around New York.
Screaming the whole time.
Because of course you would. You don't do this every day. Of course she would be terrified of that. Anyone in their right mind would hate doing that.
All right. Well, Danny skipped to the end of the movie already, but I'm going to go ahead and give my overall thoughts of everything with the movie. I thought it was the perfect balance of being absolutely hilarious. I was laughing the entire time. There were just so many funny bits, whether it was between Peter Parker and his friend Ned, or with MJ, or if it was with Happy and Aunt May. There was so much that was funny about this movie. But there was also so much emotion. It was clear that this movie was meant to show Peter dealing with his trauma and even PTSD of what happened in Endgame. But it was also kind of meant to be a place for us to process our trauma of that. We got to mourn Tony along with Peter as he mourned Tony and everything else that he's had to suffer through this time, and also kind of walk with him as he bared the weight of what's on his shoulders now, because all of the kind of almost the titans of the Avengers are gone now. We don't have Captain America anymore. We don't have Iron Man and
Thor either.
Thor blasted off into space with the Guardians, and so it's just it's almost like everything is falling on Peter's shoulders, and he's not sure if he's emotionally ready to handle that or mature enough to handle it, and he's struggling with all of that. So I thought we got such a good blend of humor and high school awkwardness and all of that nostalgia, and everybody in there just had really great comedic timing. But we also got a really solidly emotional movie that we could connect with because we're all still pretty traumatized about Endgame also. So we were able to connect with that and what he was going through, and I just thought it had some really good emotions. And Tom Holland has a great sad face. When he's emotional and sad, he just really sells it, and so you just kind of feel it right along with him. So I love that about the movie. I thought the visuals were incredible. There are some scenes of Mysterio kind of manipulating reality, and all of that it could have been so soupy and muddled, and instead it was incredible. And Danny can probably speak to that stuff better than I can because he's techier and nerdier than I am. But all of that I thought looked really good and was really cool, and I loved those scenes. I loved the depth that they gave Mysterio. I thought they made him a really compelling villain, and they really did a lot to show where he came from and where the people that were helping him came from, and I love the twists involved there and what that was. So I love the movie. That's what I'm getting at here.
No, I'm right there with you. I've been thinking about it. It is my favorite, as of this moment, it is my favorite live action Spider-Man movie. It is not my favorite Spider-Man because I think that's going to go to Spider-Verse because man, oh man, Spider-Verse. But it is my favorite live action. And just to talk about what you just most recently brought up, the villain, when they announced that they were using Mysterio, well, first, again, back to Homecoming. When they announced Vulture, everyone went, they're going to do Vulture? That old guy in a bird suit? That's going to be their villain? And of course, he was one of the best Marvel villains they've ever done. And in the same way, they announced Mysterio, and a lot of comic book fans were very excited, like myself. I was like, yeah, Mysterio! Ah! But then also, we all stopped back and like took a moment and went, really? You're going to do Mysterio? Like, do you think that's going to sell to mainstream audiences that they're going to buy Mysterio? Because he's kind of a weird character when you take him out of comic book context. But yet again, they have figured out ways to just make it all work, and especially make it all work in 2019. You bring up the idea of like how the visuals could have looked really weird. We're in full spoiler territory, so I don't really care that much about ruining things. But what I was looking forward to was, how is he going to make illusions for Peter? And how is that going to make him emotional? How is that going to damage him physically? Like, all sorts of different things. And it looked so... They did a creative trick where initially all of Mysterio's illusions were kind of like dream sequences. Like, oh no, there's a whole bunch of Spider-Mans, or like there's a hall of mirrors, and so on and so forth. So you went through this whole dream sequence, and you're like, whoa, Mysterio can do some weird things. There's a zombie Iron Man, which also, there's a zombie Iron Man. Like, pour one out.
Upsetting.
Very upsetting. So you think that that's how it's all going to be, and they do kind of stylize it and what have you. But then Nick Fury comes in with his gun, bam, takes him down. Hooray, Nick Fury's ready to go. And then you realize, no, they're also using the illusions as full-blown realities. Like, to the point where you almost question, well, what am I seeing in any scene in this movie? Like, Peter's walking around, and I was nervous the whole time. Like, no, anyone could be fake. Everything could be just a trick.
It's interesting, too. Like, so we went into it that we both have a little bit of comic book background knowledge to know that Mysterio is a bad guy. I would love to know from people that didn't know that of what this movie was like, because it definitely sets him up in the beginning to be a good guy so well that I almost started to think, are they going to do something different here? Are they going to turn Mysterio into something he's never been before in the comics? Is he actually going to be a good guy? Because, you know, the MCU they're using source material, but they can do whatever they want and riff off of those things. So I even almost started to fall for it. So I really wonder what the twist of Mysterio was really bonding with Peter and coming off as this good guy, and Peter trusted him to the point that he gave him the glasses that Tony left him. And all of that was kind of making me think, what is this like for somebody that doesn't have the prerequisite knowledge that Mysterio is a bad guy? Mm-hmm. And what was that twist like when they realized it? Because even I was struggling. I was starting to believe it. I was thinking maybe they are going to make him a good guy, and this is some major twist that I didn't expect, is that we have a new Avenger in Mysterio. And so I definitely wondered what that was like for somebody that's never seen it. So I don't know, write into the Average Disney podcast or something to let us know. Tweet at me at CaitlinJW and let me know what that was like if you've never seen it before.
Yeah, Mysterio as a character was very fun. I think a lot of what you were just saying can be attributed to Jake Gyllenhaal and he's an incredible actor. And way Caitlin's also in love with Jake Gyllenhaal, so
not in love. I enjoy looking at him.
He was fantastic, and he really, really sold it. And I agree with you. There was a part of me that was very, I don't know, maybe they're just going to pivot with him, and maybe there's something I'm not seeing here. So that would be very fun. AverageDisnerd@gmail.com. Please, I would love your feedback about that. But what I loved about the idea of Mysterio in this movie is that this is the movie that ends Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the point of Mysterio is that you don't always know what you're looking at. And you think you might know what you're looking at, but there's a twist or whatever. I'll be very curious to see what happens at Comic-Con in about, a week, 2 weeks from now, to see what Marvel announces, because it's almost to me them showing their hand and saying, yeah, you guys think you know what the MCU is, but we're about to go into a very different direction, and you should be prepared for that.
The post-credits scene
yes.
of Spider-Man, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Another example of it's not always your eyes aren't always telling you the right story. You think you're looking at Nick Fury and Maria Hill the whole time. You're not. Mm-hmm. You're looking at Skrulls, which, P.S., they had made a reference earlier to the Krees in the movie, and Nick Fury just casually references the Kree War or something.
That's not even the post credits I was talking about. I'm talking about the one with J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh yeah. What am I talking about?
I mean, that too. Like, that was crazy, and like that's probably a whole other podcast, because I'm wondering if that's setting up what the next Captain Marvel movie is about. That's a whole other show. If Danny ever lets me come on again.
Jury's out.
Next time somebody can't make it on the show that's scheduled to. I'll be here. I'm always ready. It's like Lucy and Ricky. Just let me be in the show. Anyways, but back to the other post-credit scene with J. Jonah Jameson and the video clip that Mysterio made before he died. I don't even know where that's going to go.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless, because cinematically, sure, in the comics, this has kind of happened before, like his identity has been exposed and whatever, but like from a cinematic point of view, it's never happened. The whole unique thing of Spider-Man in the MCU is he's the only one that has a secret identity. Everyone else is kind of just like, Steve Rogers is Captain America. I am Iron Man. I am Iron Man. Like, it's a very interesting twist on the very first movie of the MCU. Tony Stark just comes out and says he's Iron Man. And everyone's like, whoa, he just did it. But the inverse of that is that Peter doesn't want people knowing who he is and who his family is and who his friends are, because he's 16 years old. So now, moving forward, he's going to have to hide, and he's going to have to fight for this. Like, Corey Disbrow, again, friend of the show, had brought up the idea to me that he's probably going to need a lawyer. And if you need a lawyer and you are in New York and you don't have a lot of money, who might you go to other than Daredevil, Matt Murdock? Like, that's...
And Froggy Nelson.
But this is just crazy to consider that, because yes, he would need a lawyer, and if you have Spider-Man and Daredevil in a movie together, what could you do then? Like, there's there's so many interesting spins that
Yeah.
you could take on this now that you have this. So,
Especially now that they canceled all of the Netflix Defenders stuff.
Iron Fist and
Ugh.
Jessica Jones.
Don't
and
get me started. We have to wrap this show up, so don't get me started on Iron Fist.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the possibilities really can go anywhere. So a bunch of people were like theorizing like, oh, there will be Thor 4. And yeah, we know Guardians 3 will happen, Black Widow will happen. I think maybe we'll have a firm grasp on some basic movies that are coming out. But I don't know. There's this whole why am I blanking on the name? What's the new movie with Angelina Jolie? The Eternals.
Oh, The Eternals.
If you have never jumped into the Wikipedia page of the Eternals and you're listening at home right now, I encourage you to do so. It is bananas. It is the weirdest thing in the world.
The Eternals is so weird. I was like texting Danny one day when it was like a Saturday when I was off and he was at work, and I was just reading Wikipedia articles about the Eternals because that's not a comic that I've ever read before. And they had just made an announcement that day or something about the Eternals. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and find out what this is. And it's so weird. It's so out there. And especially because it's a series that was kind of started and then unfinished multiple times. So it just has a lot of kind of muddled lore. And so I think maybe what they're hoping to do with this in the MCU is just kind of take the raw infrastructure of it and do their own thing with it, because it doesn't have a set storyline necessarily the way that, I don't know, the Infinity Gauntlet was already a set story. It doesn't have that. So we'll see. I think there's definitely going to be some surprises coming for what's in the future for the MCU. I don't think they'd want it to all be predictable at this point. I think they're probably still holding a lot of cards back.
Their formula worked for a very long time, and the way that they started succeeding the most recently in Phase 3 is by doing weird things. Look at Thor Ragnarok, one of the best, movies in the MCU, in my opinion. It's weird. It's different. They started doing different things. So I think that that's going to be what they're going to keep doing. They're going to keep innovating. They're going to keep trying to just stay ahead of themselves. So yeah, Far From Home, fantastic.
Definitely go see it.
See it again.
Make a night of it. Go to Grand Destino Tower.
Yes.
Check out the bars there. Then head over to Disney Springs and see a movie. And if you're looking for a good deal for after the movie, Stargazer's Lounge or Stargazer's Bar.
Oh, yes.
That's where we went after the movie, so that's why I'm referencing it. And I guess we started this with me talking about bars, so we can end it.
We could wrap it up the same way.
Stargazer's Bar, which is the outdoor bar that's kind of underneath Planet Hollywood. They have a happy hour, and they have that happy hour early in the day from 5 to 7, and they also have it from 10 to close.
10 to close, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and it's $5 drafts, any of their drafts, so imported or domestic, and craft beers and all
And they
of
have
that.
a lot of drafts.
They have a lot. They have tons of local Florida ones. They have all kinds of different drafts that are really great, beers and ciders. And the night we were there, we have yet to confirm if this is a consistent ongoing thing, but the night we were there, we were informed that they have added liquor to that $5 happy hour. So, their well liquors were also under the $5 category.
Yeah, we have yet to confirm.
Don't take us fully for serious on that, but we were pretty excited that night that we were there.
We've yet to confirm this 100%, but let me tell you, because of who I am as a podcaster and what I mean to this brand, I will do that work for you, dear listener. I will go there and find that out for you. You can...
But that wasn't even on the menu yet. Our server just told us that. He said we just introduced this, but we have liquor on the happy hour menu for $5 for our wells. And we said, what? So anyways, I think that's a good date night for anybody that's looking for one, is to go for your happy hour sunset time at the Grand Destino Tower and then head to a movie to check out Far From Home. And then maybe one last nightcap at the Stargazer's Bar for your late night happy hour. if you can find a way to squeeze in Hagrid and Big Fire and really make this whole podcast about your evening,
oh man,
you're impressive, because that's a lot of things to do in one
you know
night.
What, you know what? If you do it, if you end up doing half of that in one day, and
it took us a month to do all of that stuff. So you're a better date night champions than we are if you can do all of that in one night.
If you're out there and you can do that, and you can prove that you did that, like, I don't know, take pictures and show me the timestamps, I will send you a swag bag. I will send you, dear listener, Average Diz Nerd merch.
But also, I'm going to speak for Danny, and if you do any of those things and you send us pictures of it, we'll send you some stickers. There's some Average Diz Nerd stickers.
Absolutely.
And I think if you go do any of these cool, awesome new things that are happening this summer, you deserve a sticker. So let us know if you go ride Hagrid, if you go to Big Fire, if you check out Grandestino, if you see Far From Home, and our last little bit, if you go to Stargazers and you get the happy hour, and especially if you find out if that adding liquor to the happy hour menu was real, we'll send you some stickers, some cool Average Diz Nerd stickers. There might be a few of those cool Pride stickers left. And Danny, did you want to say something about Pride?
You are stealing my thunder. I had it on the dock. I was ready to go with this. But now that you say it, yes. It's funny because the last episode I had, if you had listened to the Toy Story episode, I had made a little plug for the Pride sticker promo that I was doing. So for those of you that don't know, potential new listeners out there, for the month of June and Pride Month, I was doing a fundraiser for the Zebra Coalition here in Orlando, Florida. They are a local nonprofit that focuses on the LGBTQ plus community, specifically youth ages 13 to 24, and their goal is to be a resource for them. So that goes all the way from being a community center to being able to offer counseling services, offering housing, and finding homes for children that may have been kicked out of basically their homes since they've come out to their families. So they are an amazing group, the Zebra Coalition here in Orlando. My goal was that in June, I wanted to raise some money for them. So what I ended up doing was selling some Pride stickers. Like, they were basically variants of my normal Average Diz Nerd sticker that you might see on your podcast player right now. But I made a rainbow Pride version of them, and I was selling them for $250 each. And I'm very proud and very thankful to every single person out there that have purchased one from me to say that we have raised $1,000 to donate to the Zebra Coalition, which for a local nonprofit like that, I'm sure that it's going to make quite an impact. So seriously and sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to every single one of you out there that has contributed to that, because you are impacting lives directly here in Orlando. And that means so, so much to me, and more importantly to every one of them. So thank you. That being said, we should probably wrap up this show. It is getting late. Caitlin, you had mentioned your Twitter handle earlier. Where can people find you?
You can find me at CaitlinJW on Twitter and at CaitlinJW on Instagram. I'm not like a particular brand or anything, so I'm not going to promise you anything specific. My Twitter is a mixture of Disney, Halloween Horror Nights, and politics. So do with that whatever you like. My Instagram is mostly pictures of food, drinks, and Danny. So if you want to check out our recent trip to New Orleans that we did for my 30th birthday, my Instagram would be a great place to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at CaitlinJW if you want to follow me for, I don't know, adventures around Disney World.
And I will put that in the show notes because your name is
Disney World and local Orlando. I'm also a big promoter and fan of the actual city of Orlando. So
we are an actual city that exists outside of Disney. I did a whole episode on it. I will put that in the show notes, your Twitter handle and your Instagram handle, because your name is not spelled conventionally, let's say.
There's no conventional way to spell Caitlin. There's just 15 different ways to spell it.
That's very true. So if you're looking for that, go and check out your podcast player and check out the show notes. If you're looking to follow me, I'm at Average Diz Nerd on Instagram and Twitter. There's an Average Diz Nerd Facebook page, AverageDizNerd.com. All those places.
Email him.
Yeah, you can find all of this on the website.
You can stalk him. We really only go to Animal Kingdom and Typhoon Lagoon, so that's where you can find him.
If you do have
resorts,
always resorts. What I would ask, though, if you have enjoyed this episode, if you have enjoyed previous episodes, I would love for you to leave a review on iTunes. That does a lot for me and the show and all of my guests. So if you are liking it, if there are things that you want to give me feedback on, just go on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those places. Please leave me a review. And as Caitlin said earlier, if you can show me that you left a review and you want a sticker, find me on Twitter, DM me, whatever, and I will make sure to get one out to you.
So reviews or going to places that we have mentioned tonight will get you a sticker.
One is significantly cheaper.
I would be so excited if somebody shows us that they went to any of the things we talked about. I just think that'd be really cool. So if you can do that and send us a picture that you are at any of those places, and you will get a sticker, because I think that's really cool. If you take anything we said tonight seriously, then you definitely deserve a sticker.
That's a very big disclaimer. If you took anything that we said tonight seriously.
If you think that we have good taste in our recommendations of the Haggard Coaster, of Big Fire, of Grandestino Tower, of Far From Home,
Summer,
and Stargazers, my one last mention is getting a really cool corksicle from Wine Bar George.
Oh man, she got it in.
I tried so hard to include that in the podcast tonight, and Danny eliminated it. But I got this really cool neon blue corksicle from Wine Bar George, and I think it's great. It comes with frosé when you buy it at first, and then you get $10 refills on your frosé. I will send you 2 stickers and, I don't know, something else cool that I find somewhere if you tell me that you got a sticker, if you got a corksicle because I told you to.
The George of Wine Bar George would be very, very happy with this.